One of my favorite videos that I've made on this YouTube channel was the Why I Want video for Anton Lundell. Now, I will say Why I Want is a series that I do kind of regret not working on a little bit more, especially towards the 2020 NHL Entry Draft, but that's mostly just because I saw other very valuable scouting resources on YouTube that I think people should value over my own opinions. It led to me making less prospect videos and directing everybody who wanted prospect videos towards those very, very educated, very good hockey scouting analyst people like Scouting, like Draft Dynasty, etc. And we kind of focused more on the hearsay and the trade rumor side of things, but alas, the Why I Want video for Lundell is one of my favorites. Lundell, if you watched that video, was a guy who I said was the best defensive forward of the entire draft, the best player away from the puck in the entire draft, because you're drafting Anton Lundell not for the offensive upside, but for everything else he does outside of that. It's the light little touch passes that he does on the boards to set his teammates up for a breakout. It's the defensive positioning. He always knows where to be when he doesn't have the puck, and he always knows what to do when he's in his own zone to break up a play and send the puck back the other way, or put himself in a position to guide his team in the right direction, either by opening himself up and getting a pass, or blocking off the other team, allowing his teammates to go forward. Lundell was the smartest player of the draft defensively speaking, and his offensive numbers, which were seen by some as a dip in expectation, kind of pulled him back. We saw guys like Jack Quinn, Marco Rossi, and all this stuff. Their numbers were so grand that it pushed them over Lundell in the draft rankings. But now we're a few days into the 2020-2021 season, and Anton Lundell has absolutely bounced back. We're talking today about Lundell and his performance yesterday for the HIFK Hockey Club, as this 19-year-old center just put up what was the best point productive game the league has ever seen for somebody who was at his age group. In the HIFK's 11-1 win over the Jokerit Hockey Club, Anton Lundell got 2 goals and 4 assists for 6 points. And man, this is kind of where the big contradiction comes in. Today's actually a day full of irony, and we'll get into that in the next video uploaded on this channel in about 2 hours from now. But this video right here kind of goes over a big piece of irony that we exhibited on this very YouTube channel a few months ago, because we did talk about Lundell, and we did talk about how, yeah, his Corsi is one of the best in the league, despite the fact that he was only 18 at the time. He is such a strong player defensively that even though you're not getting point production that's through the roof, you're still getting a player who is very, very good. A Selke winner in the future, as I dubbed in the title of that video. And it's honestly a pretty fair claim to make when you reassess the circumstances of that video specifically, because Anton Lundell was a guy who definitely did have his fans. Some people saw the defensive two-way ability, puck away from his stick kind of mentality playstyle and saw so much value in that. But others took a look at that and said, okay, well, but Rossi is scoring more points, so what gives? And at the end of the day, it's a fair argument to say that 1 point production is better than 2 defensive coverage, but at the end of the day, there still was so much to look forward to with Lundell. But the contradiction comes now, because Anton Lundell is legitimately one of the top point producers in the entire Finnish Liiga. He's at 19 points in 14 games played. He's at 11 goals in 14 games played. And this guy has been absolutely blowing the roof off of the house. He was recently given the captaincy for the HIFK Hockey Club at 19 years old. He's the first player in Liiga history to ever score 6 points in 1 game. And now if you take a look at it, he is probably one of the more hotter players in this entire entry draft. Now, I know some of you probably are wondering, how the heck did Anton Lundell get 6 points? This guy was great earlier on in the year, but how do you get 6 points? Well, Statboy Steven has your little update here. The HIFK only had 10 forwards and 5 D-men active for this game. And as a result, it kind of pushed guys like Lundell into the playing field a little bit more. When you have a team that has 10 forwards, you normally have 12, and you have 5 D-men, you normally have 6. That's 3 players gone from your roster right away. That's an entire forward line. If you actually space things out properly, you have yourselves what is pretty much a top 9 plus an extra forward, and then you have 2 pairs of a defensive core and then another extra D-man. And it's really funny how Anton Lundell was the guy who, in these circumstances, with the C on his sweater, was able to go out there and be that guy. He took all of our criticisms. He said, okay, you guys are talking about how I have a low offensive ceiling. I said in my video, the Why I Want video, that I saw Lundell as a 50, 55, 60 point scorer in the NHL. But nah, man, he's throwing that out the window. Because if you go over to the all-time Liiga records and you sort it by U20 seasons since 1994-1995, among players with over 1 game played, Anton Lundell is first. He's first, straight up just first. We're taking out Olli Jokinen because that's 1 game played. Yeah, that's a different performance right there. But his 19-year-old year is better than Olli Jokinen, who has had some very successful years in the NHL. 89 points in 06, 91 in 07. Funnily enough, with the Florida Panthers too. Then you have Mikael Granlund right underneath him at a 113 points per game. My gosh, Mikael Granlund, we've spoken about him a ton on this YouTube channel. He was a guy who was almost at 70 points back in 2017. And then immediately after, down there on the list, look at this, you have Sebastian Aho. Ooh, man, that's a good one right there. Sebastian Aho is a guy who is a legit point per game plus player in the NHL today. And he's only 23. So for Anton Lundell, he's got some very good company, and I can't stress enough just how good this start has been for him, and how contradictory it is to the overall idea that people like me, people like others on Twitter and YouTube were talking about when it comes to his offensive production, because he really just took things into his own hands and said, yeah, okay, I'm gonna start scoring points now, thank you very much. It's actually kind of funny, because I did note this in the previous video where we spoke about Anton Lundell, but there was a reason why some people were disappointed with his production last year as a whole. If we take a look at the numbers, last year in the Finnish Liiga as a full-time 18-year-old, he posted up 28 points in 44 games, which is not bad. It's really not bad. But people were kind of expecting a little bit more, because the season before that, when he was 17, this was his draft minus 1 year, he had 19 points in 38 Liiga games, which if you go over to the all-time Liiga stats and you take a look at the guys who were over a few games played over here, he had the same draft minus 1 production as Barkov, who went 2nd overall, and he had similar production to Jesperi Kotkaniemi when Kotkaniemi was in his draft year. So just take a look at the draft minus 1 production themselves, ignoring the fact that Lundell was one of the older players for the 2020 draft and that Kotkaniemi was one of the younger players of the 2018 draft. Their numbers were similar. Kotkaniemi's draft year production was similar to Lundell's draft minus 1 year. So that's why people were expecting more. And ultimately, his production last year, while not bad, it wasn't up to the standard that people saw was possible a year beforehand. Which is why people took a look at the actual surprise. Oh my gosh, Jack Quinn came out here scoring 50 goals in his sleep. That's a guy who I'm going to put up on my rankings. Marco Rossi is the #1 point producer in the entire CHL. This guy's an absolute phenom. We're pulling him up in the rankings. Cole Perfetti was one of the top producers in the OHL. My gosh, this guy is amazing. Put him up there in the rankings. You could debate whether or not that's right or wrong, whether or not just points and strictly points should be as much of a deterring factor as they are in discussions like these as to who should go where in the drafts, etc. But at the end of the day, it's how scouts and it's how people in the media and it's how scouting outlets view these players once in a while. So Lundell dropped over to the Florida Panthers, getting selected with the 12th overall pick at the 2020 draft. But my goodness, is this guy putting up a draft plus 1 year that puts him above some of the guys who were taken earlier than him. We always kind of knew that the top 11, the top 12 of how the NHL draft ended up going was kind of the ballpark as to how everybody kind of thought that top 12 was just going to go in a different order. It was Lafreniere, Byfield, Stützle, Raymond, Sanderson, etc., all the way to Lundell, but the order was what people were concerned about, and with the way Lundell is performing, still at that incredible defensive two-way game that he has had and developed over the past few years, he is starting to show the world that the offense was never a compensation. So, I don't know if I'm going to be taking back my words and say, okay, well, I said earlier he could get 50, 55, 60 points in the NHL. Who knows what the ceiling is now? I mean, this guy's outproducing Aho. And Aho's a guy who's had a point per game over the past few seasons combined. Furthermore, on the goal-scoring side of things, Lundell, I think if you take a look at all the numbers, I think he's the best goal scorer ever out of all the U20 players. I mean, he's the #1 point scorer, so I wouldn't be surprised. But at the end of the day, my gosh, this guy's been absolutely amazing. Talk to me in the comments what you think about Anton Lundell, the hottest prospect coming out of the 2020 NHL Draft. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.